Hi, I'm Ben.
I'm Hamish.
We're Monte.
You're watching the AU review.
We've got a new album to talk about, which
do.
is very exciting.
Finally, yeah.
Came out a little over a week ago.
Yep.
How does it feel to have Who We Are out in the world?
Relief.
Relief more than anything else, because we recorded it like nearly 2 years ago. It was November 2012 that we went and like laid down all the music for it and stuff. So it's been a long time like coming together, but we wanted to do it properly. Like we didn't want to rush it. We didn't want to kind of just like mix it, master it, put it together and just throw it out. So we've been kind of sitting on it, like slowly like drip feeding singles and stuff like that, but it's finally out and we can finally kind of go, right, that's done. Not put it behind us, but start focusing on like what's coming next. So
I think in the time that we've been sitting on it, we've written about another album's worth of songs, and so you've always got that, every band has the problem, but we want to share these new songs that we have, but we still haven't put out the older songs to the wider public. So we're happy and we're really excited it's out, but it's also a bit of like relief so that we can finally share it and start to work on the next step as well.
So you mentioned that you were sitting on it for quite a while. I guess let's go back to the recording process though. Is it something that you did all at once? Did you spread it out over a period of time? Talk us a bit through the process of putting this together, because obviously you drip, as you said, you drip fed the actual music itself.
Yeah, so it started with pre-production and our producer coming up from Melbourne and coming into a rehearsal, and then we went up to the Grove Studios where we tracked all the instrumentation. So that was all the drums, bass, guitars, piano, percussion, those kinds of things. And then our producer sort of said, cool, now we're going to spend some time making sure that the vocals are everything that they could be. So that was sort of the main reason why it started to drag out.
we basically like gutted all the vocals that we had at that point and kind of redid them all. So it was like we had all the music done and we could listen to that, but then we basically went back to square one and started pre-producing again, but just for the vocals. So Sam, who produced the album, he plays in a band called Gatherer from Melbourne, and so we would like traveling to and from Melbourne a few times. Like we would go to Melbourne for a weekend just to do demos of vocals and then like drive back and then come back down, record bits. And so that dragged out like a lot longer than we had expected initially, but I think it was worth waiting because I think that's one of the strengths in all of the songs is the vocal stuff going on. So
yeah, so I remember Stay kind of came out, so we finally had the vocals for 2 or 3 songs and we're like, okay, let's get this going. So Stay came out in August last year, and at that point we still hadn't recorded vocals for half the rest of the album, but we just wanted to start moving things along. So that's been the big sort of wait, and then also just making sure we didn't cut any corners. So something we're really happy about with the album is that every aspect, from the music itself, from the way it was recorded, from the mastering to the artwork to the promotion that we've been working with, we haven't cut a single corner. We'd rather do it and do it right because it's our first CD. It's a little baby for us as well, so it's something, when we're 40 we want to look back at and sort of be happy with. But also we just felt that these songs, that we'd invested a lot emotionally in them, and we wanted to make sure that they could be everything that they could be when we finally shared them with the wider public.
So how far back do some of these songs go then?
Ooh.
Interesting story. There's a song on the album called Death of Me, and I remember I just finished high school in 2011, and Ben was living in Australia. I was still in Christchurch. I was like 18, and I got a text or an email or something from him saying like, because I was planning on moving to Australia, and he goes, oh man, I've like demoed these songs, and it was like this gronky ass recording of like an unplugged electric guitar like playing the riff and stuff, and that was like the first kind of incarnation of a Monte song. And that was like when we were still living in separate countries, like 4 years ago. And that one almost didn't make it on the album for that reason, because we're like, it's so old. But it made it on here somehow. But like, yeah, so they date back a lot. That's the whole thing with this album, is like it spans like the last 3-4 years. And yeah, so
yeah, it's weird to put the first song that you've ever written on an album, because we released a few like we did a digital EP earlier on in our career, and to come back to the first song, and it's strangely been one of the one we've had the best feedback about as well, and one when we'd played it live in the past as well that was received really well. So yeah, to take even further back, I bought a Telecaster years ago, and it just sort of unleashed this whole new songwriting aspect in what I was doing. And then I had about 4 or 5 songs, sent them via email to Hamish and then Brendan as well, and we're all like, okay, we're going to make this, we're going to happen. And then even a year before that, Hamish and I had been sitting on a beach in O'Kane's Bay, which is outside of Christchurch, by an hour on New Year's, drinking just this ghastly rocket fuel with absolutely everything we could find, and talking about, we're going to start this band, man, and it's going
to sound like brand new, mixed with like thrice, because I'm so sick of playing metal, bro. Let's do like rock. And and then that song that made it on the album Death of Me is just like a shameless brand new ripoff. It's like when we were still kind of not writing our own songs.
So yeah, there's some history.
It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it does.
And now you're embarking on a tour from through November and December?
We are. So our guitarist Brendan's been very fantastic in getting that booked, so I have to just acknowledge his work there.
Yeah, it's really hard being all from New Zealand, like never having kind of grown up in a music scene in Sydney and like not knowing anybody. It's literally, you just have to be like and just email anybody whose address you can find to try and hook shows up. So we finally got enough contacts that we could kind of pull together this string of shows next month. So.
And yeah, I think it's a pretty good range of shows, getting into a bit more of a regional shows. We've always loved getting out of Sydney. One of the things I find sometimes with Sydney is that, and this is for a lot of artists, you kind of make it outside of Sydney, and then the people in Sydney get a bit more interested about your show as well. And so we've taken opportunities now to go to Adelaide a few times, down to Tasmania, and so this leg we're back to Tasmania and adding on Hobart and going to Bendigo as well, and we're looking at sort of booking a second lot of shows as well in the earlier part of the new year, which again, just getting into the regions, because it's just fantastic playing out in those parts, we find.
And I mean, how much touring have you done in sort of those areas?
So we did Launceston and Adelaide on a little tour for Reminiscence, and that was the second time we'd been into Adelaide. And then there'd been a few other little shows before that as well. And so we haven't done a massive amount of exposure yet, but you definitely find the way you're received in those small towns is quite different.
It's pretty reminiscent of being in NZ as well. Like if you go to a place that not many other people go, regardless of what it is, people will come out. People want to check out bands and live music and stuff, and it's cool being in a place where people will have never heard of you before, and you just kind of rock up and play, and like people get really stoked on it beyond like whether you're trendy. Like it doesn't matter who you are, if you play well, and like people seem to respond to it, and this is pretty cool.
And you mentioned that you've pretty much already got another album of material written. So what is next? And
well, we're kind of in the middle of writing a whole bunch of stuff. Like we're kind of not really sure where we want to go next, because like I said, these songs are so old now that we're gonna have like a pretty fresh perspective now. But we're one of our plans for January is to go out to like a house in the middle of nowhere for a week and just jam and see what we can come up with, and then like the next thing we want to just pump it out really fast. So yeah, pre-production and then straight into like demoing and recording, and we might try and do a little bit of the stuff ourselves. But yeah, you should hopefully have something fresh from us like middle of next year. We sort of thought, let's do the complete opposite now of the first recording process, and let's put a really tight time frame on it to push ourselves and just set a new challenge. So the idea is that physically there's going to be a copy of the next release in our hands in July next year, and famous last words to say that now on camera, but that's really what we're aiming for. So it's going to be a really compressed writing process and a recording process where we just have to really be on top of what we're doing, and I think it's just going to be a different challenge for us. Yeah, like it took us like 2 years to build momentum to this point, so we don't want to lose that. We just want to keep going and going. So